Did you know you can do this in Hogwarts Legacy? Or pull off a combo like this?
Arresto Momentum, Confringo, Bombardo, Descendo, Expelliarmus, Glacius, Defendo.
I loved Hogwarts Legacy's combat the very first time I had a chance to try it, and one of the first things I said is that it would be easy to understand, but difficult to master. And as I've been progressing through the game, I keep learning more and more about the nuance of the combat and just how deep this system really is, not to mention, it's a lot of fun. So the first clip I shared is using the Glacius spell to freeze an enemy and then move in close for an instant takedown with Petrificus Totalis, which I used to think was only available in stealth. What's more, this also works with Arresto Momentum, so again, you can cast the spell and then move in close for the takedown. What's really interesting about this is it does not seem like you can do this when there are other enemies aware of your presence in the area. So if you try and pull this off right in the middle of battle with other enemies around, it just won't work. If this is actually how the developers intend for this mechanic to work, then that tells me it's mostly intended as an extra layer to the stealth mechanic rather than something that's supposed to be used in the heat of battle. I'm still not completely sure on whether or not I'd want to see it actually enabled in the middle of fights. I mean, sure, it would be ridiculously good fun, but it could be just a little bit too strong. I don't know. Let me know what you guys think in the comments. For now, we'll have to enjoy it from stealth or as maybe a nice visual flex to finish off your fight with a group of enemies. Glacius, though, is really useful just across the board. Shout out to Boomstick Gaming, which is where I first saw someone performing this insane combo right here.
Expelliarmus, Descendo, Glacius, Defendo.
Guys, this absolutely shreds, and ever since I saw this, I've been having a ton of fun with it. I've also mentioned before the importance of the field guide and the collections page. Game director Alan Tu even called this out on Avalanche's recent live stream, urging players to really pay attention to this field guide and the information that's in there. A lot of the fights you could be struggling with may have simple solutions if you just knew how to approach the enemy. Now, one additional layer that I have since learned about this is what the field guide doesn't always tell you and how it actually leaves at least a little bit of the strategy up to you to figure out. And I love this. I love that it doesn't just give every single thing away. Take, for example, the Dugbogs, which you can levitate them by the tongue using Levioso at just the right moment. That, of course, is in the field guide. What the field guide doesn't tell you is that if you cast Defendo right after that, it's going to almost always be an instant, oh so satisfying KO.
Levioso, Defendo.
One way to take your combat prowess to a whole new level is by speccing your character's gear with traits that complement your playstyle and the spells you prefer to use. This is really where you can create some truly incredible builds, guys. I'm working on one right now. I'm calling it the Merlin build, which places a priority on getting my ancient magic meter filled as quickly as possible. But then in addition to filling it quickly, I also want to deal out just an incredible, insane amount of damage with the powerful ancient magic finishers. And there are traits to do both of those things. Now, some of the gear you find in Hogwarts Legacy will have a trait already applied. And it's important to know that just because you have a piece of gear with the trait, it does not mean that you've fully unlocked that to use on any piece of gear. So if you have one and you really like the trait, don't sell or get rid of that piece of gear or even change the trait until you confirm that you do in fact have that trait unlocked. And again, you can do that inside the field guide. You can see exactly which traits you have. To unlock the trait so you yourself can apply it to different pieces of gear, there's a bit of good news, bad news here. The good news is that we know exactly which activities in the game unlock more traits. To start, you can obtain a few specific traits by completing combat challenges in the field guidebook. It'll tell you exactly which ones you're going to unlock by doing this. For the rest of the traits, and there are 75 total traits in all, you'll need to take out bandit camps and find the loot chest inside the camp. And this takes us to the bad news, which is that it seems to be completely randomized on which trait you unlock from each specific bandit camp. So I can't tell you exactly which one to go to if there's a very specific trait that you're after. The traits themselves are split into two broad categories, with roughly half focusing on defensive characteristics, such as making your character take less damage from a specific enemy, as well as offensive characteristics like dealing out more damage with specific spells like Confringo. There are also 3 different tiers to the traits, with the most powerful powerful, only being compatible with legendary gear, which is of course the highest tier of loot in the game. Now, once you do have these traits fully unlocked, you can apply them as many times as you want. You're going to do this using the enchanted loom in the Room of Requirement. Now, I say you can do it as many times as you want, but you will have to weave this trait every single time into the gear that you want to apply it to. So if you take it off and you want to put it back on, you have to weave it yet again. And to do this, make sure you're taking care of those magical creatures inside the vivariums, because you have to have a steady supply of those ingredients to weave these traits. For our next tip, we're going to talk about the cursed status effect. And by this point, it's absolutely no secret that the unforgivable spells are not only in Hogwarts Legacy, but that they're actually really powerful in battle. They all have this cursed status effect, which is noted in-game with the little green X you see here on the enemy. Now, for my first playthrough, I'm doing a good playthrough, not learning any of the unforgivable spells. However, I was pleasantly surprised to learn that there's much more to the dark magic talent tree than first meets the eye. When you're just starting out, you won't have access to the talent tree yet, so don't worry if you can't find it right now. It's hard to say exactly when you unlock these because it depends on how many side quests you're doing, how much exploring around the open world, but it does happen as part of the main missions, and I personally unlocked it around the 10-hour mark. But just know that even if you aren't planning to learn the unforgivable spells, and definitely if you are learning them, you need to look very closely at all the options in this talent tree, because you can actually apply this curse effect on spells other than just the unforgivables. So just by seeing that Dark Arts card, don't think that it only applies to the unforgivables. Go ahead, click there, look through, and see if you have any there that you want to use. You can get it on Expelliarmus, Flipendo, even Stupefy, so every time you block an attack with Protego and fire back that Stupefy spell, the enemy that you hit will now have the cursed effect. So this effect, it's going to cause enemies to take even more damage as long as they're cursed. Now, I personally think unlocking a few of these cursed talent options is absolutely worth it, but for sure, you want to be very careful about how you spend these talent points, because you cannot unlock everything, guys, and they are not refundable. Who knows if we'll get a respec option in the future, maybe in an update or if there's ever DLC, but right now, just know that you need to be absolutely sure before you spend these talent points exactly where you want to go with them. You'll gain an additional talent point each time you level up, with 40 being the current max level in the game. So as for leveling up, guys, there's so much to see and do in Hogwarts Legacy. It's not always clear what gives you experience toward leveling up and what doesn't, but it's actually pretty straightforward once you know exactly what to look for. It all starts and ends with your field guide and the challenges inside. Completing these challenges, guys, is how you level up in Hogwarts Legacy. And these challenges, they're tied to all sorts of things, like different collectibles, like the field guidebook pages, but many of them are also tied to combat. Of course, you can complete these combat challenges anywhere you can do battle, but one of the best places where you can essentially farm out these challenges is with the battle arenas. There are 2 of these available to all players in addition to the Dark Arts battle arena, which is included in the deluxe version of the game or available as part of an additional add-on you can purchase. The first one is in the North Ford Bog battle arena, which is located all the way at the very top of the map, just slightly to the right here. The second one is located on the southern side of the Feldcroft region, and then if you have access to the Dark Arts arena, it's located in the Forbidden Forest. These can actually be pretty tough. Personally, I enjoy the challenge, but if you are just wanting to purely grind out the challenges for XP, you can always turn down the difficulty to the game's easiest setting, which is story mode. Now, one final note here is that although you can keep farming these challenges for more experience, that is only true up to a certain point. And it all goes back to that field guidebook and those challenges there. Once you have completed those combat challenges, you're not going to earn any more XP for doing the stuff here in the arenas. You can keep doing them as much as you want, practice, use them all you want, but once you complete those challenges, you'll no longer earn experience points for continuing to battle it out in the combat arenas. Now, if you do have any fights where you take a few hits and lose health, make sure you aren't needlessly wasting Wiggenweld potions at the end of the fight. I don't even want to think about how many potions I've wasted, so in the heat of battle, it's not going to refill. But if you end a fight and your health is not at max, simply wait a few seconds and you'll see it refill automatically all the way without ever needing to use any of your potions. In the heat of battle, though, of course, you'll want to make sure you always have a good supply of these potions on hand. You can actually carry up to 25 of these at a time, and while you can buy them from Pippin's Potions in Hogsmeade and even find them about the world, it's going to be much more efficient to brew your own once you've unlocked the Room of Requirement. They're quick to brew and only require 2 ingredients, Horklump juice and Dittany leaves. The former, which is quite plentiful throughout the open world, but you can also purchase at Pippin's Potions in Hogsmeade. The leaves can be bought from various shops as well, but you'll want to make sure you buy the seeds as soon as you can and then start growing your own in the Room of Requirement. Our next tip involves the demiguise statues that you're going to find both inside various rooms at Hogwarts as well as in buildings across the Scottish Highlands. Now, personally, I think this sets off one of the most important quests in the game because you have to do this this quest if you want access to everything. If you want to be able to get anywhere, listen up regarding these demiguise statues, because the first time you come across them, you may not be completely sure what you're supposed to do with them. When you first see them, don't even waste your time. Don't try spells. It's actually not a spell that you need to interact with these little guys. Instead, you have to first activate a quest involving the Hogwarts caretaker, Gladwin Moon. Now, Moon actually has a rather humorous story to go along with the quest, which I won't spoil it here, but I do love how different he is from Argus Filch, the caretaker we're all too familiar with from the original Potter series. To get access to this quest, you'll need to progress the main story through the first trial. The season will then turn to fall, and you'll get this quest to pop from Mr. Moon. He'll also teach you Alohomora, which is going to be required for finding all of these demiguise statues. There are actually 3 levels to Alohomora, and you'll learn all 3 of them from Gladwin Moon and through this specific quest. Once you've kicked off the quest, you'll then have an understanding of what you're supposed to do with these statues, and as I mentioned, it does not involve using a spell. You simply collect them, but you can only do so when it's nighttime in the game. Fortunately, you can progress time whenever you want by opening up the game's map and then choosing the wait option. The map also includes a list of all demiguise statues. As you hover over various locations, you'll be able to see if there's a statue in the area and whether or not you've obtained it. Okay, another really important note here on the demiguise statues, guys. You can use Revelio to help show you the location of these. However, they will only light up blue when it's evening. So this can be really tricky if you're in certain parts of Hogwarts and aren't sure whether it's night or day, because you could just be spamming Revelio, but they will not show up even if you were right next to one as long as it's daytime. So you have to make sure that it is nighttime if you want to be using Revelio to try and find these guys. And this actually ties in perfectly with our next tip about Revelio, which by this point I'm sure you're already very well aware of just how important this spell is. It can reveal so many different things visually, even through walls and through floors, but in addition to the visuals, you'll also want to make sure you're paying close attention to the sounds with Revelio. That's right, if you have a good pair of stereo headphones, it is going to help you pinpoint these field guide pages. If you're running around Hogwarts or even around the Scottish Highlands and you hear this little chime, that is an indication that there is a field guide page nearby. And the visuals, they're certainly important too. Here's an example of when it helped me find a completely hidden area that I had no idea was here. Okay, wait a second.
Revelio.
That looks like we should be able to get in. What? This was not part of a quest. I just stumbled upon this randomly and found an interesting note and a bit of loot inside this door. I'll see if you can find it for yourselves. Next on our list, we have a few important notes here about the Merlin Trials puzzles, which are actually some of my favorite side quests to do in the game. They're also the key to unlocking more gear slots, so you'll definitely want to tackle as many of these as you can to keep opening up more slots. I think they're pretty well balanced in terms of providing just the right amount of challenge without being too insanely difficult. Now, if you do come across one that you feel is insanely difficult, it's quite possible you just don't have the spell you need to complete it. That's right, some of the trials do require very specific spells that you may not have access to yet. They could even be spells that you could learn, you've just been putting them off. And the game will not tell you this, so you could be struggling for minutes, hours, I don't know, with one of these trying to find the solution, when in reality, all you need is a different spell to help you move forward. So I would recommend learning each of the spells in the game as soon as you have the opportunity, because it's just going to open up the game so much more in terms of everything you can do and unlock, just like with the moons and the Alohomora spell. I should also point out here that not all of the Merlin trials even require a spell at all. You'll see similar trials because not all of them are completely unique, but there is quite a variety, and I don't want to completely give away the solution here on how to solve all of these, but just note there are times you'll need to think outside the box a bit, beyond just the spells you have, and maybe you can even jump to a few different conclusions from there. One of the other puzzles in the game is set within Hogwarts, and it's these arithmancy doors. There's actually a really simple way to do this without needing any sort of guide or cheat sheet. You see, each magical creature depicted represents a number, and they're in order all around the door. You just have to remember it starts from 0 and not from 1. The creature depicted at the very beginning is a demiguise, creatures in the wizarding world that can turn invisible. So just remember demiguise, invisible, 0, and start counting from there. As for the actual numbers, it's a simple equation where you need the numbers and symbols to add up to the one in the middle. And if you're having trouble knowing which panel to activate, because there's always going to be 2 panels, all you need to do is look at the direction of the triangle and whether it's pointing up or down. Then look at the panel with the triangle pointing in the same direction, and that's the one you need to set. Set it to the appropriate creature based on the numbers, and you'll knock these out in no time. And really quickly, guys, I just want to say thank you so much for all the support lately. It's been absolutely amazing, and if you're finding this video helpful, consider subscribing to the channel for more. It really helps me out, and I very much appreciate it. All right, the last one here may surprise you, because while the arithmancy doors are a great way to get some easy loot right there within Hogwarts, as you start to travel outside the castle, you're going to encounter more and more of these little loot bags. A lot of times these are on the ground and easily accessible, but other times they'll be in a more hard to reach spot. Well, I'm happy to tell you that these loot bags, you can simply use the Accio spell to pull them toward you. You will not be able to use R3 though, so you may need to use the left trigger to zoom in a little bit and line it up just right. It also does not work on the actual loot chests in the game, but these bags use Accio every time. Hey, even if they're on the ground, you can still use Accio if you want. Now, if you really enjoyed these tips and tricks, I have another Hogwarts Legacy video here I think you'll really enjoy, and one that would help you through your journey in the wizarding world. As always, witches and wizards, thank you all so much for watching. I'll talk to you again soon.